day that CAYLEE disappeared. This is a documentary that was released in 2022, which is when I first watched it. But because of her recent, and by her I mean Casey, resurface on social media, and in an effort to promote advocating for victims, protecting the privacy of everyday people, and a position of advocating for other people in the legal sphere. So I watched the 3-part documentary again, and I skipped through a lot because I felt that what I wanted out of this documentary was to know, so CAYLEE is not alive. Who did this? If it was an accident, how did it happen? And why did you act the way you acted after your child disappeared? So, but it took 3 long parts to get to the bottom of it. So I'm going to give you the shorter version of that documentary and focus on the things that I was interested in. And of course, if you want the whole context, I'll have the name of the documentary and where to watch it on in the description box down below. And I'll try to remember to put it in the first pinned comment in case that makes it easier to find for you. As always, this video is expressing my personal opinion and ideas based on a documentary. We all can watch this documentary and see things differently. I think that my opinion is very unpopular, I guess, and not for the reasons that you're thinking, but based on some personal experiences. So let me tell you a little bit more about this case. And remember, we can all agree to disagree, and that's okay, because the number 6 looks like a number 6 from where I'm standing, but it may look a number 9 if you're right across from me. So it's okay to think differently, which is very unpopular to say when we live in the world of cancel culture, and we all need to follow this rules in order to not get canceled, which I think it's kind of ridiculous. But I'm going to also the one of her roommate. So, when she's setting up her room in this house, she's bringing pictures of CAYLEE, drawings from CAYLEE, and the last stuff that she has from her daughter. I thought that that was very manipulative, and that even if Casey brought all this stuff to the room where she was going to stay, they could have chosen not to share it in the documentary because it felt very like this is what innocent people, this is how innocent people grieve their children when they pass away after a tragedy. And even the explanation that Casey gives at the end, it's not no, you're not entitled to pretend that you are one of those parents, the ones that lose their kids, or a kid in an accident, or out of an illness, or after they're being kidnapped, or whatever the case may be. I thought that it was it was in poor taste to include all these things. And it's also asking, well, let me rewind. The interviewer, or it's a woman, I don't know, I didn't look into her, but the person that is interviewing Casey, she says, why now? Why did you agree to a documentary about this? And even when you don't have any kind of creative power, or you can't edit it to make you look a certain way, it's how she no creative control, that's what she said. Why now? Why wouldn't you just keep quiet, live your best life? And why do you want to tell people what happened now, and under the circumstances where you have no creative control? And Casey said that it's because she wanted to honor her daughter properly. And let me tell you something. I can understand that she wants to do this, but I don't think it's the way to honor her. If you look better, you know what I'm saying? It's like, just because you're trying to explain yourself, it's not honoring her memory. She still died. She would have been, okay, so CAYLEE was born in 2005. My son was born in 2006, my youngest. And he's 18, about to be 19. So CAYLEE would have been 20 years old. Oh my gosh, 2005, 2025, hello. But I don't think this is the way to honor her memory. I think this is a way to cover your butt and try to gain some sympathy from people. Now, she also says at that point, I want to honor her and tell the truth, but she says that she still doesn't know what happened to CAYLEE, which, don't worry, she says what happened to CAYLEE in her head. She says what happened. happens, but we're introduced to what happened to CAYLEE from the beginning is while the interviewer and Casey decide to take a hike together. This is in a secluded area where Casey shares that she has the worst social anxiety and that she copes with it by going into this nature walks and she takes pictures basically, and as they're walking through this I don't know trail, they ask Casey like, what's your tattoo? And she has it, and I think it's beat in her back towards her, I think it's her left shoulder, and she says what it is. But basically it represents growth and / rebirth, which it's a completely different thing. You're either being born again, which means that it's a different life, or you're growing. In my opinion, it's kind of an oxymoron. At least a contradiction. And she says that she is trying to fight for a normal life. Okay, so up until this point, she hasn't said a word about CAYLEE. She then goes into what happened after the trial. So, me, Casey. So, again, me, Casey, and then me, Casey. But then again, me, Casey. But, oh wait, let me look really sad for you. And me, Casey. It's like, I'm sorry if I don't feel sorry for you. I really would like to, because no matter what you believe, if she did kill her daughter in your head, that's the reality. Or if you think that this was an accident she didn't report, you're still wrong, Casey. And what you did, the consequences of what you did, are not the consequences of getting a speeding ticket. Something that you pay for and move on, and erases or deletes itself from your record in a few years. What you did impacted a little innocent life, and I am so sorry if you think that your mistake, your negligence, or your whatever you did to her on purpose should be erased from your record after this many years. But let me remind you, CAYLEE was born in 2005, and at the time, Casey Anthony, the mom, was 19 years old, and Casey was born in August of 2005. Casey has a few pictures and videos of that day that other people took, and she seemed very, very young and very happy to have her daughter. At least that's what you get from the pictures. Casey says that CAYLEE was perfect, that she was a lot of fun, and that she was, even though she was young, a young mother, she tried to we get on July, I don't know, it says 15 or is it 17? One of those days. Casey's mom, Cindy Anthony, calls 911 and reports her granddaughter as missing for 31 days. Cindy is crying. She is like very much, it seemed like a genuine emotion. And she says, well, the 911 operator asks for, your typical things, your address, your name, and stuff, and then asks to talk to Casey, the mom. Casey, she's like so calm that it's like psychopathic behavior. And you can hear this 911 call. She's like, well, she says that she had to go to work and that she left her daughter at the nanny's apartment, and then she went to work. Now this nanny is Zenaida Gonzalez, I think Hernandez, which is the most Hispanic name that, like, last names, and then Zenaida. I don't know, some people even made fun of the name, thinking that it was because she was giving the girl Xanax so she could go party, and that's why it's a thing with a name. They believe that Casey believed her own lies and would just make up stuff that she would remember, and that's where the name came from. Casey said that after work she went to pick her up and Casey wasn't there. And this lady is asking Casey, so why didn't you call the police that night? And she said, I am looking for her in my own ways. Which, what? Are you freaking for real right now? Eventually, in the investigation, they just go and check at this apartment, and that specific apartment has been vacant for months. So that's when your lie started. Zenaida Gonzalez Hernandez didn't exist. Which again, people assume because of the name that she was just trying to remember it. She never lived there. Nobody lived there. So there's no way she had a babysitter or a nanny living there. Then they ask her where she's working. She says that she works at Universal Studios. When the police calls Universal Studios, they said no, she doesn't work here. But they still come up with a plan to go pick her up and go with her to her work so they can see her office and see how she reacted to being caught in another lie. She even went with them and got in, was waving at people awkwardly, and then they went to this end of the hallway where she turned around and said, I'm sorry, I don't really work here. Now, you're probably wondering why lie about where you work, and it ties down to her explanation of what happened that day. So just hold on to that, okay? Now, she was notorious for looking for her daughter and going places with the police, but never, not once, being seen crying or upset or anything that would show any kind of emotion. When she went to jail eventually, and we'll get there, even her mom talked to her on the phone and said, Casey, I doubt you because you're so calm about this whole thing. You must know, because if you were in this, position where you don't know where CAYLEE is, or, you'd be thinking about the worst case scenario, and your heart, I mean, I get it. I get what the mom was trying to say. The grandparents both look genuinely sad and worried, but I have to say that mostly Cindy convinced me that she had nothing, like she didn't know what was happening. The case went wild. Social media, they got a hold of a lot of footage, pictures, videos, witnesses that confessed that while CAYLEE was missing, Casey was partying, going to clubs, dancing on tables, getting tattoos, getting drunk, and overall just partying. So much so that there's this one tattoo she got done while CAYLEE was seemingly disappeared that says Bella Vita, which means that life is beautiful. And I am so sorry, but you better believe that if one of my kids is missing, oh my gosh, the last thing in my head is to think about how beautiful life is. And also about going and getting a tattoo instead of going through every house in my neighborhood, knocking on every door, checking in under every garbage can, under every bed. You know what I'm saying? Like, who? And again, this may come back to grief. She wasn't crying, she wasn't acting sad, but maybe this is her way of grieving. But let me tell you something. If she was looking for her daughter, she would have called the police. When people don't call the police when there's some kind of illegal activity happening, when they're the ones committing that crime. So at this point, it looks very bad for Casey. I'm sorry, but I don't think she was aware of the way that people were looking at her and judging her because of the way she was acting. She could have faked cry. She could have stayed in bed depressed for 31 days. She could have called the police. Common sense, which is not something she has or had at that point, Then, she could have told her parents, or her mom at least. She could have been looking for her daughter night and day, but no. She wants us to believe that her daughter was missing for 31 days, but instead of doing all those things or pretending that, you were sad and looking for your daughter, you actually got caught on video dancing half naked. Well, not half naked, but that's how people refer to her videos. Like what? There's a disconnect in there that I just cannot really make the connection. reports it to the police, which that leads to them sending dogs that confirm that a dead body was in fact in the trunk of the car. To make things worse, for whatever reason, Casey was out on bail after she was arrested. I really can't even try to remember the time when I saw her face on the news that night where she was getting out on bail, and I said, is she really innocent? Like, is there an ounce or an inkling that this woman is really not responsible for her daughter's disappearance? When they interviewed the grandparents, George said that the last day he saw his granddaughter was on June 16th. That he was leaving to go to work, and that's the last time he saw her. After June 16th was when the partying happened, and she was Casey. Okay, this is another thing. After her daughter disappeared, before it was reported to the police that she was missing, she stole a checkbook from one of her friends and was using to buy herself stuff. Like, maybe even paying for her tattoo on July 3rd. Like, life is beautiful, life is good. What? It was also reported that CAYLEE, I'm getting all the names confused in my head. While CAYLEE was missing, she was staying at her boyfriend's house a lot, and that she used to bring CAYLEE with her to her boyfriend's house, and that she, according to some witnesses, she was a good mom. But at the same time, when after CAYLEE disappeared, and she spent a lot of time at her boyfriend's house, she showed no signs of being worried about her daughter. So, how can we say she's a good mom that once her daughter disappears, she just goes party and forgets about the rest? This case this all led on Casey being accused of murder. But to skip it to the end, she was found not guilty. And I saw this interview, part of the documentary, where the sergeant, I think he was a sergeant at the time, at the sheriff's department where this investigation started, and he's saying that he has no doubt that Casey killed that baby girl and didn't want to get caught, and that's why she lied. Because people were baffled about this idea of Casey. Well, like, why wouldn't you do that? Like, people after all this, which I skipped that part, but eventually they did find CAYLEE's body a few miles from the Anthony residence, and her body was wrapped in a way that I'll tell you at the end why it's so important, the way that she was wrapped. But they did find her remains, and that's when they charged her with murder. Again, she was found not guilty, and I feel like pay for that by going to jail. But her defense team really, and I'll get there. I'll get how they were able to get her out, okay? But her defense team eventually gave her some money once she got out of jail or prison and became what she calls her surrogate family, because she doesn't talk to her dad. And wait for it, I'll tell you about the dad. And she doesn't talk to her mom. Now, once she got out of prison, she started working for Pat McKenna as a research assistant, and she found herself trying to pay it forward by working in the criminal defense field. So, what really happened that day? Okay, long story short, the way that Casey was able to create enough reasonable doubt for the jury to consider that she wasn't guilty was because she brought to light that, by the way, George was a police officer before. That George, her dad, sexually abused her since, I think, according to Casey, since she was 8 years old or something like that. And that her father kind of brainwashed her into not telling people, you know, what was really happening between them or what he was doing to her. Which, if it did happen, I can only imagine what it does that to a daughter, especially when, you know, your father is like a police officer, one of the good guys, as they were referred as, and now we're seeing all this dark side of George. Another thing that I think created enough doubt was the fact that the defense team were able to get this woman who George met in one of the vigils for CAYLEE, and they started sleeping together. The woman said that she felt bad for George. I'm sorry, I'm just speechless that somebody is trying to help or, you know, being there for you in a vigil. And then, so she felt bad for George and not for Cindy, because she decided to go have an affair with this married man, with this woman that is in the same position as George. I make it make sense. I'm sorry to this lady, but her excuse of why she started sleeping with this man is gross. And just say it for what it is. I wanted to, and that's it. But like, I felt bad for him. Didn't you feel bad for Cindy? Like, what? The point is, she went and testified in favor of the defense and said that in one of those conversations, she said, well, George said it was an accident, but nobody's going to believe that this was an accident. Now, this is all part of what it was said, but let me go and tell you. According to Casey, what really happened that day, and it's basically, it was in the afternoon. This is the last day that CAYLEE was alive, and Casey was tired and needed to take a nap, okay? So she convinces CAYLEE to go sleep with her. They go to her room, in which she makes it so like, oh, and I closed the door, but I didn't lock it, and this and that. And I'm like, bitch, if my father sexually abused me, number one, I turn 18 and I get the hell out of there if I didn't report him. Number two, I would not leave my daughter anywhere near a psycho, okay? And this is all alleged. But the fact that she tried to like incorporate her sexual abuse as part of her, oh my gosh, I messed up. I didn't lock the door of my bedroom when we were sleeping. Okay. So apparently CAYLEE got up and went out, and she said that by the time she woke up, she saw her father with CAYLEE in his arms, I believe. Don't quote me exactly. I just could not listen to her at the end, and I kind of came back what, I watched years ago when I first watched it. But it was bothering me so freaking much to listen to this woman and the amount of nonsense she's saying. Even if it's true, what she's saying, even if it's true, it's like you could have done something different and you chose not to. So don't come at me with all this nonsense and expect me to make sense out of it. So no, ma'am. Anyway, long story short, by the time she gets up, she sees that CAYLEE is all wet, and according to George, she fell in the pool and drowned. Now, if I were Casey, which thank God I was, I just can't even imagine being in her head, and I see my father, the guy that sexually molested me for years, carrying my daughter. You better believe he's not touching my daughter with a 10-foot pole. Like, no. Number two, if I see my daughter being carried by this creep, the first thing that would cross my mind is he was messing with her. He was touching her. He was doing this. He was doing that. I don't personally believe that a child user, you put the app in the beginning, can't change. I think that they can stay away from it, but if tempted, would always, unfortunately, in my head, that's how I think, and if we know that a person is struggling with this kind of thing where they feel the need to use children for nasty gain, let's not have children around them. Like, the hell is wrong with you? The hell is wrong with you? So then the father rapped her, and here comes the rapping because of the way that she was rapped. During the trial, Casey's brother testified that every time they lost a pet, George would wrap them in a specific way, and then that's the specific way that CAYLEE's body was wrapped when it was disposed. Which, what the hell? What the hell? It's your granddaughter, and you're gonna, even if that's true, that's your granddaughter. Call 911 and say, my granddaughter just drowned. I need help. Do CPR. I don't know. Try for 30 minutes to do something here's the thing. What if, and this is all in my head, this is my opinion and not facts. What if he was doing something to CAYLEE? And let's say she did fall in the pool. And now there were gonna be all these paramedics who have, I'm pretty sure we're just like us here at the library, mandatory reporters. Like, if you see abuse, you must report it. So in my head is, what if, yeah, CAYLEE did fall into the pool, but there were signs of abuse from, allegedly, George. Because why would he want to hide the body if not to get rid of evidence of something he was doing? Because what is the problem on reporting your granddaughter drowning in your pool, other than, of course, a person drowning? But I'm saying, what would be the repercussions of, for you as a grandfather, to report or call 911? Sorry, it makes no sense in my head. It will never make sense, but the people, this is what I need people to understand. The people that don't report criminal activity is because they're doing it. You know what I'm saying? You don't want to get caught. So why would you call the police? Why would you report something that's going to get you in trouble? Why would you hide something? Well, anything that you hide is because you don't want other people to find out. To find out what? That she drowned. Sorry, but it makes no sense in my head. Casey said that her father asked her to keep this a secret and that he was going to take care of the body. She also says that she didn't know where the body was, that her dad got rid of it, and that she never asked her dad because of all the physical and all the psychological abuse that she endured. It turned her into a liar, and it kind of changed her as a person, and that's why she was having and that's why she was having all this party time and all those things, because she was actually protecting her dad. So you mean to tell me that she had CAYLEE when she was 19, so this CAYLEE was what, almost 3. She was born in August, and I think last day she was seen alive was in June. So you mean to tell me that you are almost 22 years old, if not 22, and you are willing to lie and put your father, who, by the way, you said sexually abused you your entire life, and condition you to be a liar, a pathological liar, to protect him because he deserves it? Like, make it make sense. I also have to say that, yes, sometimes trauma will make you do things that make no sense. So, you know, unfortunately, I don't believe a word that comes out of Casey's mouth, even though she made a point to say that now she's a very blunt person. She always comes with the truth first because she learned that lying always got her in trouble. And when they asked her employer, let me think, Pat McKenna, he said he never caught her in a lie. But he's a lawyer, so I don't trust him either. So I don't know where the truth lies, I guess. Because I do believe that something, that CAYLEE might have died for, and again, do your research. If things that will make sense in your head, but like maybe she ate something she wasn't supposed to. Maybe she was sleepy or something, or drugged, and she fell in that pool. But something else must have been happening, because two people, supposedly, allegedly, were keeping the secret. George, which in my heart and in my opinion, he looks very guilty. So the way that he wrapped CAYLEE, yeah, could it be that Casey learned from him on how to do that? Yes. But I also believe that kids are not present for when the parents wrap the pets that they're gonna bury. But maybe Casey did want to know how her dad and then did it with CAYLEE's. But all I'm saying is that this is what Casey said that happened. It was all an accident. Her father took care of the body, and she lied and didn't call the police in order to protect her dad, who is her sexual abuser for years, who taught her how to lie, constantly made her into a pathological liar, and she decided to protect her dad. Is that a possibility? Yes, it is a possibility. But I'm gonna say, let's say that I decide to go along with what happened and kiss my father. You had 31 days to change your mind, Casey. You had 31 long days to say, what in the hell did I agree to? Why did I agree to keep silence with my father? Mind you, this isn't the case that it happened the way she said. So, in my head, Casey is responsible for her daughter's murder. Whether this was an accident or it was negligence, which in that accident, there's a little bit of negligence. But you better believe that I think she's responsible for it. Now, being young, we all make mistakes. Oh my gosh, I made so many mistakes when I was in my 20s. Like when I was 20, I had, let me think, I was 24 by the time I had my third child. No, my fourth child. So at Casey's age, at least I had 2 kids, and I was pregnant with another one. And like, I made mistakes. I'm not gonna sit here and pretend to be the perfect mother, which I wasn't. I was overwhelmed. I had headaches every single night. My husband worked a lot, and I was at home with these kids. That my first 2 were boys, and they were very close in age. So they decided to be extra naughty together and drive me insane. But I think the mistake that Casey did, if in this case we're gonna agree with her and say it was a mistake, not every parent makes that mistake. And I can't blame it on her age, because I was a mom of 2 by, the time that she had CAYLEE. And let me tell you, my entire life, I took CPR classes, I took first aid classes. My son, my second son, I would never let him cry. I got very rudely interrupted, but all I'm trying to say is that those are the that's our version of the story, and I do believe there's as to what really happened that day and how deep things could be. Whether there was some kind of sexual abuse or any kind of other thing that would have been pointed out by calling 911 if she did in fact fall into that pool. And I will never understand her behavior to going out and partying while her daughter was missing. I believe she knew where her daughter was, or at least what happened to her daughter during those 30 days or 31 days. So you don't come to me and pretend that, now I have my daughter's picture. No, I carry her. No. And yes, as you get old, you mature and you start to see things differently. You start to question decisions that you could have made or changed or never made, or what ifs and all those things that it feels so good. As year passes, I can, see my brain now and my brain even 5 years ago, and I'm like, oh my gosh, thank you for this wonderful thing that it's called growing and learning and seeing different point of views and how it's meant, how it's shaping the way I think. So do I believe that Casey misses her daughter? Oh, yeah, I believe it. But I also believe that honestly, her own narcissist personality, all she cares about is people liking her, and she wants to be the new, what's her name? Blanchard. Oh my gosh, I am drawing a blank. Gypsy Rose. She wants to be the next Gypsy Rose. She killed her mom, but she went to jail, paid for it. And now she's out, and now she's popular, and people, follow her on social media, whether they like her or not. But no, Casey, you're a different person. Your name is Casey Anthony, and even though your narcissistic personality is telling you that you can explain your way out of this, no, you cannot. Because people will always remember all the footage and all the things you did for 31 days. And I don't care if that's the way you grieve. That's awesome. But it's telling people how to feel about you. Unfortunately, it's not what you want them to feel for you. So this social media attempt, I hope that she realizes that people still remember. And this happened in 2008. I understand that, kids that are now in their early 20s, we're not tuning into the, news at night to figure out what was the new development in CAYLEE Anthony's case. But, it may not feel as personal to maybe that generation, but for those of us who were adults, or at least we were in our 20s then, and we went through every single of the televised things, like trial clips, everything, you better believe that it's not about forgiving, because it's not my place to forgive her. But I don't have to like you. You can be a piece of shit and live your life there in that corner. We don't have to be friends. I don't have to like you. You don't have to like me. You don't have to rely on my views, which, by the way, I would never. Oh, no. But I feel like, again, the narcissist in her is telling her that people need to listen to her. And if justice was served in her case, that she could be the advocate for the next psycho mother. No. sorry, Casey, but that's where I think most of us draw the line. And now you know what she says that happened, how she was able to be acquitted or found not guilty of what happened to her daughter. What do you think? Do you believe her? Do you not believe her? What do you think happened to CAYLEE? Why would anybody not call the police if it was an accident? What were they hiding? If this was George and Casey's doing, what were they hiding? I'd love to know what your theory is. Thanks for being here today, guys. I'll see you guys next time with hopefully a less heavy case so I don't get